India cuts the internet while protesters are beaten. The BJP cracks down on farmers, but are they largely targeting Sikhs? I'm Ali Mustafa, and today's Newsmakers is the religious dimension of India's mass protests. This week, we're taking a look at the mass farmers' protests that have affected life across India. Earlier, we looked at why farmers have taken to the streets and what it would take to appease them. Today, we'll be focusing on the religious and ethnic side of the demonstrations. India is home to more than 20 million Sikhs, the vast majority of which come from the Punjab region in the north, and many of them are farmers. So when you take a look at the farmers' protests, it's easy to see the large Sikh contingent. In fact, Sikhs started the agitation against the BJP's controversial farming laws back in October. And Sikhs have paid a heavy price for their resistance. Many claim to have been beaten, while large parts of the Indian media claim the farmers protesting have been hijacked by Sikh separatists. In the government's eyes, these separatists are considered terrorists who want to create their own separate homeland, Khalistani. Now some Sikhs are afraid they could be persecuted once again.
In 1984, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ordered a military attack on the Golden Temple, one of the holiest sites for Sikhs. A few months later, 2 of her Sikh bodyguards killed her, triggering some of India's worst riots in years. Thousands were massacred in retaliation by Hindu nationalists.
So are Sikh farmers right to be concerned? To answer this question and much more, let's cross over to London, where I'm joined by journalist Sunny Hundal, who has been following the protests in India. In New Delhi, we have senior BJP official Sudhanshu Mittal, and in Chandigarh, from India, we have the agricultural expert, Devinder Sharma. Thank you all for being here. I want to start with you, Sunny, from London. You recently wrote an article on open democracy, and I'll quote a passage from that article to all our guests. But I want your reactions to this line in the context of what's going on. So you write, the BJP and its allies are using a classic divide and rule tactic, which they have copied from the British, but it is part of a broader strategy to turn India into a Hindu theocracy. Where do these farmers' protests fit in to what you are writing, Sunny?
Right. Thanks for having me on the show and for quoting that line. And I think that really summarizes what's going on in India. I mean, this was a very focused protest around the farm laws, around the fact that farmers, not just Sikhs and Punjabis, but all over the country would suffer from. Now, if it's a dispute about farming laws, then that's legitimate, and it's an issue to deal for the farmers and the government to resolve. But what the Indian government is doing now is using a strategy that is used against Muslims in the past, which is to focus on sort of trying to paint the farmers and other people as extremists and separatists. So, they're focusing on the fact that even last week, there were some tweets by Rihanna, Greta Thunberg, and all these people, and trying to somehow imply that these people were paid or supported by Sikh extremists, and therefore the farmers themselves are, being overrun or being led by Sikh extremists. And it's a classic strategy, which the BJP has employed in the past. And the risk is that it turns this into a Hindu versus Sikh conflict.
Well, let's take that point and throw it to a regular on our show, Sudhanshu Mittal, who is a senior BJP leader. How would you respond to Sunny Hundal's assertions, Sudhanshu?
It is completely preposterous. It's the figmentation of his imagination that wants to paint India in a bad light. I mean, Sikhs are an integral part of India. The Hindu society, I don't think he understands the history of Sikhs. The Sikh religion itself was carved out of the desire to protect the Hindus. In fact, for decades and centuries, the eldest son of a Hindu family would get converted as a Sikh because this was a community which was there for protection of the Hindus. Now you are saying there is this conspiracy to divide like the British. What kind of mindset he has, I don't know.
Okay,
now,
let's put this question back to Sunny. Let's flip this question. Sunny, is there a fear among the Sikhs and especially followers of the Khalsa that they might be reabsorbed into the Hindu faith? Is there this fear that is driving these assertions of separatism or fear of a majoritarian India?
I mean, there is certainly that. I mean, the gentleman said that Sikhs are treated very well in India and they're seen as part of the country. But frankly, what happened in 1984 was a pogrom against Sikhs where Hindus, extremist Hindus went on a rampage against Sikhs. They killed them, they massacred them. And there was a whole campaign for decades after that to paint Sikhs as extremists, as Khalistanis, people who wanted to break up India, people who wanted to...
Now, I'll play the devil's advocate here. I'll play the devil's advocate here because that was a Congress party in power that was instigating these mobs or these assertions. The BJP says it never did that. All right, we'll move the conversation on a little bit. We'll move the conversation on. I know, you know, our guest in Chandigarh is waiting for us, and Devinder Sharma is an authority on the farmers' protest. He has been following this movement for a long time. He's an agricultural economist. Tell our viewers why this issue is so critical in the press, in the perception outside. What is the reality from where you are sitting, Devinder?
Well, I think it's not fair to say that this is a movement where Khalistanis or Sikhs are being targeted as Khalistanis. I think it's time to get over that. There are always opportunities when in any mass protest when people would try to discredit a movement. I think let's forget about that because Prime Minister has very clearly stated in Parliament that how respectable Sikhs are, and we have seen earlier also all efforts being made to convey this message, which is apparent. And let's be very clear that the bigger problem that we have in this country today is the farm protest, which means farmers from across the various religions who have assembled in Delhi, and they are protesting for what? I think that's the bigger question. The bigger question is that the farmers of India feel that they have been neglected for long, and they have been not only neglected, but there is a kind of a distress which prevails for over several decades now. And the income that the farmers have got over the decades has been far, far low than what was anticipated or expected. And the farmers are coming forward and saying that here is our time to get an assured income. They are actually wanting the government to give a commitment that they will be getting a minimum support price or a minimum assured price or a guaranteed price.
All right, let me interject. Yesterday on Tuesday on the show, we had a senior BJP leader, Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, who came on the show and said that the government is ready to give it in writing, to guarantee minimum support price in writing. Do you think this will resolve the issue? If the government has agreed, what's stopping it, or what's the catch, Devinder?
I think what the farmers are saying is that at present only 6% farmers in India get the guaranteed price, minimum support price, as per a high-level committee that was set up a few years back, which means 94% farmers are in any case dependent on markets. And if the markets were so benevolent, the agriculture distress wouldn't have been so huge. Now, what the farmers are demanding is that there should be a minimum support price for all crops for which the prices are announced every year, which means for 23 crops that the government announces the guaranteed price or announces what minimum support price should be, that should be made a legal right for farmers. That should ensure that no trading takes place below that MSP. That is what the farmers are demanding. So therefore, there is a catch here. What the government is saying, they're going to legalize or they are willing to give in writing, but that is only for the 6% farmers who already get the minimum support price. What the farmers are saying is that 100% farmers should be given this benefit.
Mr. Mittal, I want to turn the conversation to you. Devinder has laid out a lot of things here that the farmers are demanding. The government is saying, okay, we'll put it down on paper. The question is private enterprise? Everyone agrees agriculture in India needs reforms. But is private enterprise the best vehicle to bring about these reforms? And if so, what examples do you have?
I think this is a complete misreading of the situation and as being portrayed here. First, what did the government do? Let me just read out the first clause, which is the enabler, which says any trader may engage into interstate trade or intrastate trade of scheduled farmers' produces with a farmer or any other trading mechanism. This is an enabler for the farmer to sell his produce anywhere.
But Mr. Mittal, the farmer is afraid that if you open up private enterprise so brutally, or if you open up the farming sector so brutally without checks and balances, without government accountability or a government presence there to ensure accountability of private enterprise, it will create havoc.
You see, the Act itself provides two things. It says that the person who's buying the farmer's produce has to make a payment of 67% before he picks up the crop. And within 30 days of his picking up the produce, he has to make the payment of the balance. That's a part of the Act. A. Now you said, is there an example to say that this will be beneficial? Because you see, I had a concern. Farmers' suicide has been going on for a long time and an issue which has never been addressed by any government. So this is a government which has addressed it. Now, look at the case of Punjab, where this is supposed to have started. Punjab has been the biggest beneficiary of the provisions which the acts have provided. That you can directly sell it to a corporate body. When Pepsi came into India, there was an agreement that they will buy potatoes from farmers of Punjab so that for the production of their potato chips, the produce will come from Punjab. What was the experience? While in the open market, potato would sell at 2.5 rupees a kg, the Pepsi used to buy it at 3 rupees 75 paisa a kg. Secondly, because of the technological support, the production of the farm increased by 50%. And the farmers of Punjab were the greatest beneficiaries of this. Now to say that, well, this has not been thought about, an experience of 34 years, if that's not sufficient, then I don't know what is sufficient.
All right. You can make an argument. You can make an argument that the BJP has got the rough end of the stick. This problem wasn't created necessarily by the BJP, but the BJP is stuck with resolving it. The question is how you have gone about resolving it. You say the bill passed both houses of parliament, with a decent majority, but it wasn't even debated according to people who oppose this legislation. So do you think the BJP is in a catch-22 almost, where it's become a prestige issue for them now?
Not at all. But do you know that this act was was already implemented six months before it came into the parliament? There was an ordinance which was already in place. So the legal mechanism had been implemented much before the vote in parliament. So now to link it to the vote of parliament, I think it is just trying to mislead or befool each other. That's
all right. Let's get some reaction on this.
Practice.
Let's get some reaction on your thoughts. First from Devinder, and then I'm going to go to Sunny. Go ahead, Devinder.
Well, I think let's be very clear that there was no discussion with the stakeholders before the ordinances were introduced, or even when the laws came into place. Even the way these laws were pushed into the parliament, I think raises a lot of concerns. A lot of questions have already been raised. Now, I think what Mr. Mittal needs to know is that Pepsi Cola came to India, yes, in the mid-80s, and they promised to bring a second horticulture revolution in Punjab. I would like to ask, where is that horticulture revolution? I think let's be very clear. You know, all these
Mr. Mittal is there. Let's ask him. Let's ask him. Where is it, Mr. Mittal?
Ask Mr. Devinder. We are talking about the potatoes, which they entered into an agreement directly with the farmers, and they bought it from the farmers, and the farmers benefited. Is that right or is it wrong? Whether they came a horticulture revolution is a second story, which I can debate with him anytime. But we are talking about
he wants you to debate. He wants you to ask that question. He's asking you that specific
Debate
question.
with what? That is not that's not a subject matter of the farm law. The farm law provides that an agriculturist can sell it directly to a corporate. This is what the law is, and this is what the experience is. Horticulture revolution is nothing to do with this Farm Act.
Very quickly,
So
Mr. Devinder, I want to push this to Sunny as well. Go ahead, Mr. Sharma.
And the second part is having talked about what Pepsi did in Punjab. The second part is that look at globally, whether it is United States of America, whether it's European Union, all these market-oriented agriculture came with the promise of farmers' income would be raised. But look at America, for instance. In 2020,
how is that relevant to India?
Well, he's basing it on some example, right? When you want to privatize, agriculture or farming, you have to go on certain assumptions.
What is the Indian example? The 34 years of Pepsi. Talk about that. What claims I am making? Is he disputing those claims? No. Those claims are valid because that's what has happened. It has benefited the farmers. But instead of talking about what has happened in India, you want to bring in extraneous things. This is not the way these things can be debated.
All right, very quickly, Mr. Devinder, and then I'm going to shift to Sunny as well. He's been waiting patiently there in London.
It is very easy to give one example and then say, no, everything will be fine according to that. We have lots of examples of contract farming where contract farming failed, actually. I will not go into that. But what I'm trying to say is we borrowed this model. Let me speak first, sir. We borrowed this model from America. In America, the farmers are saddled with $425 billion of bankruptcy. Now, that is one. Look at the way farmers have been pushed out of agriculture in America or in European Union. Agriculture thrives or survives basically on the agriculture supports the governments are giving. Now, why do we want to bring the same failed model into India? We have too many strengths in India. Why can't we build up a new model based on our strengths? That is the question which farmers are asking. And I think minimum support price is a classic example. If minimum support price is given to all farmers in India, that is the only way to raise farm income to a level that it becomes a respectable livelihood for the farming community. After all, we are talking of what? 14 crore, which means roughly about 140 million, farmers with land holding size. And that is the class which needs their income to go up. And it cannot go up by...
All right, we'll come to Mr. Mittal. That these are very important assertions. I think it's important to put this in some context. I think everyone agrees that there is an issue, that the agriculture sector was in dire need of reforms, but how it's gone about, or how the current BJP government has gone about it, choosing private enterprise as opposed to a cooperative method, is where the debate lingers. I want to bring in quickly Sunny, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Mittal again. You're in the center, so you'll have to deal with both the pressures, Mr. Mittal. Go ahead, Sunny.
Sure.
Well, I mean, I think the way the BJP
Mr. Mittal, yes.
leader has, Mr. Mittal has responded by trying to shout down people is very typical of the way the BJP has reacted in India. And and the fact of the matter is that it's not just the fact that they have been trying to pretend that the farmers have no case, but also now they're trying to paint them as terrorists and extremists. And so, this is a strategy that they've used in the past against Indian Muslims when they tried to protest against the citizenship law.
For the benefit of our viewers, Mr. Mittal has not used this, but a lot of his followers or followers of the BJP have gone online and trolled people, calling farmers. For example, we had BJP trolls, high-level BJP trolls, calling farmers Khalistani terrorists, calling them Atankwadi, which also means terrorists. So, Mr. Mittal, it comes back to you. Whose purpose does this serve? There's so much confusion. What is the line that you adopt? Are these farmers terrorists? Are they separatists? Or do they have legitimate concerns? What is your point of view there?
Our point of view is that we have done something which is going to benefit the farmers. There has been a lot of politics in this agitation, and people have deliberately misled and falsified the truth.
Is the BJP backtracking? Is the BJP backtracking now by offering guarantees on MSP, by offering an olive branch, willing to negotiate? Is the BJP concerned that it has become a prestige issue for it, that it is Teflon when it comes to everything else, but on this issue, it's stuck?
BJP has offered the same thing day one. We have told the farmers that we are willing to debate on every single point you raise. We will show you what the merit is. But the stance taken by a few people is, we will not talk. You have to repeal. Now, if you have convictions of your argument,
all right. Before we digress further, Sunny and Mr. Mittal, I want to bring in Devinder Sharma. He's in Chandigarh, capital of Haryana and Punjab. I want to hear what he has to say. Where does this end? Does this agitation end with a deal? Does this agitation end with the BJP growing stronger or the farmers growing weaker? Where do you see it going, Devinder?
Well, I think that's $1 million question. Nobody knows where it is going to end. We know that the government as well as the farmers are in a deadlock position. And I think everyone in this country actually is waiting for this stalemate to end and the farmers to go back to their homes. That's a question. Now, as I said earlier, that's $1 million question. Nobody knows where it is going to, lead to. And as you rightly said, or you perhaps know it also, that the farmers have said they are going to willing to stay put around Delhi till October 2. And the government says they are not going to repeal the law. So there is a stalemate here. And I seriously think that we have to find an amicable solution. I think there is a need for a wider dialogue. There is a need for acceptance of the look into farmers' demands. And after all, what they are saying, if the government is willing to bring about, let's say, 10 amendments, then I think it's almost means that the laws that they brought it were not perfect. I think we need to really have a broader debate with the stakeholders and other sections of the society to see that what kind of laws the country needs. I think every government, I'm sure the BJP government also would like to, benefit the farmers. So therefore,
I want to bring in Sunny very quickly, and I'll give you the last word, Mr. Mittal. I'll give you the last word, I promise. Go ahead, Sunny.
Well, I mean, I agree with Devinder on that, but my worry now is that in order to delegitimize the protest, they're focusing on the Sikh extremists angle, and that is where the danger lies. And that is why a lot of Sikhs, not just in India, but around the world, are worried that this is going to lead to more extremism.
All right, let's give the last word. Let's give the last word to Mr. Mittal.
Sunny is the typical example of vested interest trying to criminalize every situation. But Mr. Sunny, you shall never succeed. India has seen these efforts for so many times and they've all failed. We are a united nation. We don't look at things from the prism you want to see.
Yeah, but Mr. Mittal, on the ground, reality looks different. On the ground, reality looks very different. Your capital, New Delhi, is barricaded, sir. Your capital, New Delhi, is barricaded. You've got tens of thousands of farmers sitting there in the cold day and night. 238 farmers have died as a result of the cold.
That's a completely fallacious statement you're making, and I don't think you have a right to make this statement.
Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
I'm correcting you. Please allow me. I challenge you to produce the 238 names which you say have died in Delhi. I challenge you.
These are reports in your own newspapers.
No, forget. It doesn't matter. It's like Sunny. It's like the Sunny of the world who publish these reports. They don't become, a report doesn't become fact. This is not a fact. A Sunny saying anything doesn't become a fact. The fact is that all issues we have been saying, they're open to discussing with anybody. But these are the people who are trying to criminalize the situation, saying the Sikhs are worried. Now, naturally, if the Khalistanis are thinking that this is a hunting ground for their furtherance of their motives, no, it is not.
So how does this end? Very quickly, how does this end? How does this get resolved, Mr. Mittal?
Prime Minister made an appeal day before yesterday in Parliament, and a lot of favorable responses come from the farmers. He said, let's discuss, and the farmers have accepted to discuss it with the government. So I'm sure the moment the dialogue continues, some solution will come out. But the Sunnis of the world cannot criminalize this agitation. You may say whatever you want to. You have tried it with the Muslims of the country. Muslims have not stood by you. You are trying it with the Sikhs. You are playing a dangerous game. You shall never succeed.
I think it's the BJP that is playing a dangerous game.
That's sadly Sudhanshu, Sunny, and Devinder Sharma. Thank you so much for your time. This is an intriguing debate, and it's a debate that will continue beyond this program. I thank you all once again for joining us and enriching us with your knowledge. That's all the time we have for this episode on Newsmakers. Before we leave, we'll leave you with some of the most striking images from India's months-long farmers' protests.